Well, good morning, everyone, and we'll give a little bit more time for people to join, and then we'll start our session. Well, it slowed down, so it seems like people joined, and we'll be just letting late stragglers in as they come. Again, good morning, everyone. My name is Ivor, and I'm joined here by my colleague Michaela. And this is our third Thursday of a month, which we all know it means teach and learn with WiscNet. However, this one was not on our original lineup. It's a pop-up one, and everyone knows why, I'm sure, with the Cybersecurity Pilot Program being released by FCC. It's on top of everyone's mind and the talk of town, if you will. And we decided to talk about it to our membership, and we went straight to the source. Kristin Berkland is joining us today to guide us through the program. She's an attorney advisor for Federal Communications Commission, also known as FCC. And also we have online Rachel Schemelin and Bob Bocher, who represent DPI, and they'll be here supplementing the conversation, and they have an announcement to make in the end. So yeah, it's a fantastic lineup. Thank you to everyone for being here. And before we start, a couple of housekeeping notes. Again, if you have a question, leave it in the chat and we'll tend to them as we go. And yes, this session is being recorded, and everyone who re-registered for it will get a copy. All right, well, without further ado, Kristin, take it away.
Thanks so much. And I just want to add to that to say, if you feel like we're moving through the information quickly, along with the information you receive will be a slide deck that you can review at your leisure, and that will have links for you to connect to other resources. So please, I know that I can be a frantic note taker. You don't need to do that here. You can just relax and sit back and enjoy, and you will get the supplemental information down the road, and you can review it, as much and as slowly or quickly as you would like. So with that, yes, again, I am Kristin Berkland. I'm an attorney advisor with the FCC. I work primarily on E-rate, ECF, and now the cybersecurity pilot. If you have read the report and order, you will see that I am the contact person at the end of the order for questions. I will let folks know. I was hoping I could share it with you today, but I think we're still in the process of standing it up. We will have an email address where the public can submit questions, so that if I'm in meetings or I'm out on travel or something's happening, I'm not a bottleneck for you or your question. And we are going to take questions that don't get addressed today. I will take those back, and the FCC will work to get you answers through our FAQs, our FAQs. So with that, I will go ahead and we're going to try screen sharing. It worked in practice, so hopefully no technical glitches here, but let's give this a go. Okay. So, and I'm going to minimize this for folks. There we go. Are we able to pretty much see the slides?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So just a broad overview. As folks are probably aware, on June 6th, 2024, the FCC adopted the Cybersecurity Report and Order. And what the order did was to establish a 3-year pilot program to provide up to $200 million in universal service fund support to participating eligible schools, libraries, and consortia of schools and libraries to defray the costs of eligible cybersecurity services and equipment. And the purpose of the program is we want to take a look at the effectiveness of using USF funding to support cybersecurity services and equipment and see what kind of an impact that has on protecting school and library broadband networks. And then think about whether to fund or provide funding for those cybersecurity services and equipment on a permanent basis. So who's eligible to participate? If you are someone who participates in E-rate, this will not be new to you. It's going to be eligible schools or libraries, and that includes schools, libraries, and consortia of schools and libraries that are eligible for support under the E-rate program. And if folks have looked at the report in order, there are a set of rules at the end, proposed rules, and that has much more detailed definitions of what's an eligible school, what's an eligible library. So you can take a look at that and just get a sense of, do I fall within the criteria? And it's something that we'll also be discussing in our facts. And so when I provide the links at the end of this presentation and in the PDF copy that you all will receive, you can navigate to those facts, you can navigate to those information pages and dig down deep on, okay, well, am I an eligible school? Am I an eligible library? And then one thing we've been emphasizing is prior or current E-rate participation is not a requirement to be eligible to apply. So even if you don't participate in E-rate, even if you've participated in E-rate in the past, but you're not participating now, those things are not barriers to you applying to participate in the pilot program. Okay, we have had lots of questions about budgets, as you might imagine. So what we have for you here is a budget slide. And what we did is we know in the report and in order, we talked a lot about annual budgets, right? And we know ultimately at the end of the day, what folks are most concerned with is probably what is my full pot of money. And so this slide looks at the budgets as they are for the full 3-year term of the pilot. And that's important for another reason that we'll get to here in a moment. But you can see for schools and school districts, for the 3-year pilot, the total pot of money is $45,000 pre-discount for schools and school districts with up to 1,100 students. The 3-year amount for the pre-discount per student multiplier is $40.80, and that's $13.60 annually. And then a 4.5 million pre-discount pot for schools and school districts with more than 110,294 students, and that is the maximum 3-year funding cap. So that caps out at that amount. And then I won't run you through all of the library numbers, but we went ahead and did the same thing there for libraries. And I think one of the questions that came up was, what's the difference for libraries and library sites and library systems? And that's kind of worked out in these bullets here. So you can see in the first one, that talks about the 3-year pot of money, if you will, for an individual library or site that is not part of a library system. That middle bullet talks about libraries and sites as they are in library systems. And then same thing with that last bullet. We're talking about the pot for library systems with 12 or more libraries and sites. So I think that will probably answer one of the questions that came in, but to the extent that it doesn't, don't worry, this is not the end of the information we're going to provide on budgets. So, once you navigate to those links and other resources, you will have more information there that you can explore. And of course, if you want to understand this annually, you can just reverse engineer the numbers, or you can let us know, and we can help you figure out how to reverse engineer the math. Okay, so this continues on the individual budgets, again, for the full 3-year term of the pilot. And this helps folks figure out, if you're a consortia, how do I determine what the budget would be? And the one thing I want to highlight here is the last one that says comprised of schools and libraries, because the cap that applies to a consortia that includes both eligible schools and libraries, that budget is capped at the 4.5 million for schools and school districts. So it's school-based budget plus library-based budget, but with a cap. And so we want to make sure that folks are aware of that and that they understand that. And certainly more on that will come. And then on the bottom here, you know, as we have in the kind of Arab sections, we talk about schools and school districts, right? And then on the bottom, it helps you understand, okay, what is a school-based budget? What is a library-based budget? So that should all help you work through the consortia piece here when it comes to budgets. Okay. Now, the other reason that this was important, and the other reason that the previous slides showed 3-year funding amounts, is because the FCC determined that folks are not going to have to spend their money on an annual basis. They certainly can. And if you're an E-rate, that might be what you're used to, and that might be your preference. But we understand that folks may want to spend more of their total budget at the front of the pilot. We understand that some folks might want to split it up evenly. We understand that some folks might want to spend a chunk in the first year, nothing in the second year. You really can use that budget as it works best for you if you're selected for the pilot program. And so this just gives an example of 3 ways that that budget might be spent to help folks understand as a practical matter, what does that mean? So as long as a participant doesn't seek more than their total 3-year funding amount, then they can spend that money as they need to spend that money, as those expenses are incurred. An important note to that is pilot participants will have to wait until after they receive or pilot eligible services and equipment are delivered to them to invoice USAC. And there will be more information on invoicing forthcoming on, again, those resource pages that we will touch on here towards the end of the presentation. Okay, so what services and equipment will be eligible? As we say here in the bullet, a wide variety. We have 4 general categories, and you can see them there: advanced next generation firewalls, endpoint protection, identity protection and authentication, and monitoring, detection, and response. So the pilot eligible services list, if you have looked at it, it is attachment B of the report and order. We're also kind of providing it as its own standalone document in the resource links so that folks don't have to kind of look through all 128 pages of the order to see the pilot eligible services list. But if you take a look at it, you will see that it is very broad, that we understand that 4 categories doesn't capture the world. So take a look at that pilot ESL. If you think that there's a tool, a service or a piece of equipment that you might need, give it a look. It's very broad, and it contemplates, if it's something that will support the cybersecurity of a school or a library, it's likely that it will be funded. So just give that pilot eligible services list a good look. If you have questions about particular services or equipment, let us know, and we will take a look and we will let you know if it falls within that pilot ESL. But it is a very, very broad list. Okay, the process for applying to participate. I know that folks who are maybe just finding out about the pilot and who have seen that there's a 2-part application process may have some anxiety around this. So I want to make sure we give it some good attention. So we are going to make the Form 484 application a 2-part process. And we did that in large part because we received a lot of, the FCC really received a lot of comments in the record that said, look, we don't want this part 1 piece to be overly burdensome for applicants. We don't want to be providing a ton of sensitive cybersecurity information if we are not going to be selected to participate in the pilot. We heard that, we listened to it. The commission said, okay, you know what? We get it. We're going to split this out into 2 parts. So the part 1 application is going to collect a very general level of cybersecurity information. And that, I'll give a little more detail on that to say there are not many open-ended questions in part 1 of the application. They are largely multi-select, yes, no questions, and drop-down menus. We again heard what people had to say. This part 1 was really created to make applying as easy as possible and as non-burdensome as possible. So then once we get those part 1 applications in, the FCC will select the pilot participants and issue a public notice announcing who the selected pilot participants are. Only those schools, libraries, and consortia that are selected as pilot participants will have to submit more detailed cybersecurity information. So that part 1 both works to decrease the burden on applicants on the front end and also to limit the amount of sensitive cybersecurity information that's being requested up front. And the FCC, right now, we expect to open the pilot program application window this fall. We will be giving more information on timing in the coming weeks. There is an administrative piece to this process that goes out for public comment. It's called the Paperwork Reduction Act process. And so we are waiting for the 30-day public comment period for the PRAs, the short form process, to be approved. And then once that 30 days runs, we will be able to go ahead and kind of give more detailed timing when it comes to not just the application window, but all of the kind of program milestones along the way. So, bear with us, stay tuned, and check those resources pages because we will be providing more detailed date information in the coming weeks. Okay, so part 1. Again, the FCC heard the concerns about part 1 and said, okay, we get it. We're not going to ask you for, super burdensome information. We're not going to ask you for a ton of sensitive cybersecurity information up front. But that doesn't mean we don't want you to think about your proposed pilot project if you're going to apply. We do want you to think about, okay, what are our goals and objectives and an estimate of the total cost for the proposed pilot project. So, those cost figures you provide are just that. They're an estimate. So don't worry about having it down to the penny. That's not what we're asking for. That's not what the application asks for. So that is not something you need to do at the application stage. And we do ask you to think broadly about goals and objectives because, we want you to approach the application kind of knowing, okay, if I'm selected as a pilot participant, where do I go next? And so this is really the time, pre-application and application, to give that some thought. And we need this information so that we can select a diverse pool of pilot projects and we can target funding to that combination of large and small and urban and rural schools, libraries, and consortia. One thing that has come up in questions is, well, should we start competitive bidding before we submit part 1 of our application? No, there is a competitive bidding process that is part of the pilot program, and that occurs after submission of part 1 of the application. So do not start your competitive bidding early. That said, again, we do want you to think about that project. We want it, the proposed project. We want it to be a thoughtful project, and we want it to be something that's tailored to you as the school or the library or the consortia that's applying. Okay, we kind of covered this already in the last slide, but we at the FCC will evaluate the applications that are submitted alongside USAC, who is the administrator for the pilot program. And those of you who participate in E-rate or ECF are very familiar with USAC. And then again, this is our goal in selecting is to have a diverse set of projects and to target the populations that are most in need. And to do that, we're going to have a combination of large and small and urban and rural libraries and consortia with an emphasis on funding pilot projects that include low income and tribal applicants. What to expect after you apply. We really, the commission and we as the division, the WCB, as the folks who are following up on the report and order, really did make an effort to leverage existing forms and processes so things are familiar, and this is not an overwhelming process, particularly for those of you who've participated in E-rate. A lot of these forms, the pilot form 470, which is the competitive bidding document, the pilot form 471, which is where folks kind of say, okay, we've run our competitive bidding process. Here's the stuff we think we're going to order. Here are the folks who are going to provide it. Those forms should look familiar to folks who've participated in E-rate, ECF, and Connected Care. And then, as I mentioned earlier, once selected, pilot participants will complete that competitive bidding process where they will solicit bids and procure the requested cyber services and equipment, unless subject to a competitive bidding exemption. We'll have a little more on that in just a minute. So after the competitive bidding process is over, participants will submit requests for services and equipment, and that's on that FCC Form 471, Pilot Form 471. They'll get a funding commitment decision letter back from USAC that will approve or deny the funding requests. And then once that funding commitment decision letter is issued and services and equipment have begun to be delivered or have started, participants and their service providers may submit requests for reimbursement from the pilot program. And what does that mean? The pilot program, like E-rate, allows the school or library or consortia to determine whether it wants to use, it's called Bare Billed Entity Applicant Reimbursement invoicing, or SPI, Service Provider Invoicing. And really the distinction there is that under bare invoicing, the school or library pays the service provider in full upfront, and then the service provider invoices USAC for the discounted portion of the eligible services and equipment. Under the SPI method of invoicing, it's kind of split. The service provider will bill the school or library just for the non-discount portion of eligible services and equipment, and then they will bill USAC for the discount portion. And if that sounds like a lot and you're thinking to yourself, I've never heard of that before, what is that? Don't worry about that. There will be more information about that in the resources as we move further down the process. But just to kind of give you an overview of what that distinction is, to understand why a participant or a service provider may submit a request. It depends on which invoicing method is selected. Okay, competitive bidding. So the pilot program, and this is similar to E-rate. It includes a requirement that pilot participants carefully consider all bids submitted and select the most cost-effective service offering with price as the primary factor. And what that means is when you do your bid evaluations, if you're selected as a pilot participant and you do your bid evaluation, price is going to have to be the most heavily weighted factor in your bid evaluation. And there will be more on this forthcoming, so I don't want to get too far into the weeds here. But that's what we mean when we talk about price as the primary factor in competitive bidding. Some things that are not permitted as part of competitive bidding, and these are set out in the report and order, and there will be more information on these items forthcoming, but You may not request pilot program funding for costs from existing cybersecurity contracts. You may not request pilot program funding for costs that are currently cost allocating or allocated out of E-rate funding requests for advanced firewall services. And again, don't conduct those competitive bidding processes early before submitting the application, because to have a fair and open competitive bidding process, it requires that participants not work in combination with selected service providers. They need to have that fair and open bidding process first, then select their service providers. We do, I keep saying we, the royal we, the commission in its report and order it has said that pilot participants may require the services and equipment to be purchased to be interoperable or compatible with existing services and equipment. But please be aware when, if you're selected for the pilot program and you get to the competitive bidding process, that FCC Forms 470 and RFPs or RFQs or whatever vehicle you may use in combination with the Form 470, if you do that, cannot use a specific manufacturer name, brand name, or specify a specific product or service unless you also use or equivalent. We want folks to be thinking about all of the options that are out there. We want all service providers that provide a solution that might be beneficial to a school or a library or consortia to submit those bids so that schools, libraries, and consortia truly get the most cost-effective eligible services and equipment. And actually, I'm going to go back for just a minute. So there is in the report and order a competitive bidding exemption, and I'm not going to touch on that in great detail here today, just because we are working on a pilot program FAQ for that. And I want to make sure that I don't kind of in the speediness of this morning's presentation give only partial information. There's a lot of nuance to that competitive bidding exemption. So the best place to get more information about that will be on the resource pages that we're about to look at here. And so just be aware that we know folks have questions about that. It is something that we are working to compile information for, and more detailed information on that exemption will be provided here in the coming weeks. Okay, how to prepare. So we want you to, if you think you're interested in participating in the pilot program and you think you're going to file that FCC Form 44 application, we want you to start thinking about that now before the application window opens. And so things that you can do to get information as it's released, to identify questions you might have that perhaps we can answer for you or put out a back on in advance of the application itself. Stay informed. You want to take a look at that pilot program order, and it is a long one, and it is a dense order. We understand that. So as you review the pilot program order, we will be putting out to the public here, hopefully in the next week or so, a mailbox that folks can use to send questions directly to the FCC. So as you're reading through that pilot program order, if you're bumping up on a question and it's just not answered, anywhere that you can find on the resource pages, that box will be available to send questions. My contact information is also in the report and order, but sometimes depending on the day, if I have a lot of meetings or if I'm on travel, that public facing box is going to be probably the quickest way to get an answer to a question. And frankly, if you have that question, other folks probably have the same question. And so it's beneficial for the public box to receive that question so that we can work on a FAQ that answers the question for the public generally. Because if it's occurred to you, I promise you it's occurred to someone else. There are a lot of questions here, and they're great questions, and we want to make sure that we are addressing all of them for anyone who might need the answer. So there are pilot program web pages, both a USAC web page and an FCC web page. And then there's also the option on particularly USAC's webpage to sign up for updates about the pilot program. And that's a great way to get real-time information and make sure that you're up to date on, you know, if we have a targeted webinar on something and you want to participate in that, that's the best way to make sure you know about it in time to register for it. You want to make sure your registrations are up to date. If you're in E-rate, so for example, one of the things we list here is the user profile. If you are already in E-rate and you are a current E-rate participant, you will have a user profile. You want to just check through it, make sure everything's accurate. If you are not someone who participates in E-rate, that's okay. Don't let that worry you. There is more information about how to set up a user profile on the resource pages, the USAC and FCC resource pages. And you can go ahead and work with USAC to get that user profile set up and get that information filled in. You're going to need an FCC registration number. And when you get the PDF copy of these slides, these yellow parts are all live links. So you'll be able to click on them to get more information. If you're a school, library, or consortia, you're going to need a build entity number. And you want to verify that you're not in red light status or on the do not pay list. You also want to register with sam.gov to make sure that if you're selected for the pilot program and you submit invoices, that you can be paid. And then again, you know, start thinking about those cybersecurity needs. Think about, why do I want to be a part of the pilot? What kinds of things do I think I might want to purchase? Where are gaps in my cybersecurity that might need to be filled? Where are things that we just haven't been able to think about until now because funding wasn't available? We will be asking for information about the risks that a proposed project will prevent or address, the goals or objectives that the proposed project would achieve. Cybersecurity experience and expertise. This is not a detailed explanation of your experience and expertise. Please don't worry about that. And whether you are experienced or not experienced does not impact whether or not you will be selected for the pilot. So don't worry that, oh my gosh, I don't have any cyber experience. I'm not going to be chosen. We want to get, again, a mix of cyber experienced and cyber inexperienced. We want to understand a diverse pool of applicants. So please, if you're worried about this, don't think, oh my gosh, I don't have enough experience, or I have a lot of experience, so I'm not going to be someone who's selected. Please err on the side of applying, because again, we want that broad pool. And so neither having little experience or a lot of experience is going to be the thing that keeps you out of the pilot program pool. We will want contact information for designated cybersecurity officers or senior staff members. And then the services and equipment that you think you will purchase or may want to purchase. We just want to understand the big picture of that proposed project. And I just want to make sure I have hit on all my notes here before we move to this page. And I think we might have run into, let's see if I can. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing here and come back on screen. And it looks like we're doing pretty well on time, so that's exciting. I'm going to take a quick sip of water, and then we'll get into some commonly asked questions and answers here.
Yeah, it looks like we had one from Mike Daly. That Bob, thank you for hopping in and answering that one.
Okay.
Do you want me to read them, Kristin, or?
So I actually have some commonly asked questions and answers that we had worked with before from members. And so I thought I would run through those. And then anything new that you all get today, if I don't answer it in the course of addressing the ones that you received previously, send them over. We'll make sure that we get a question and answer up in our facts, so those questions do get addressed.
Sounds good. Yeah, and then it looks like there might just be like 3 in the chat here. But yeah, we'll see.
Okay, so we'll start through these ones that were previously asked so we can address these. Then we'll take a look at the chat window and the time and see where we're at. And yeah, so our first question is, will USAC provide training on how to complete the FCC Form 484? And relatedly, will prospective applicants be able to view screenshots? And the answer to that is yes. USAC is going to provide training that is specifically focused on the requirements of the FCC Form 484. And they will be offering training on the Part 1 requirements. And as they do that, and they're doing that in the coming weeks, as they do that, we will be making screenshots of the application itself available so that you don't just have to take my word for it. You can see for yourselves that it really is, the majority of that Part 1 application is drop down and multi-select and yes, no questions. And you can get a feel for, okay, what is this going to be like for me or my entity? Is this somewhere where we feel like we can direct resources? So you'll be able to get a very good sense of that. And then there will also be training for those folks who are selected as pilot participants. There will also be training on the Part 2 requirements. How long will the FCC Form 484 Part 1 application window be open? So the FCC will announce details regarding the application process, including the length of the application window in a forthcoming public notice. And in establishing the application window, the FCC expects to balance stakeholder desire to expeditiously implement the pilot program with the need to provide sufficient opportunity for applicants to pull together their Part 1 information. We understand that you want it done quickly, right? We want to move this pilot along quickly, but we also understand that you need time. And so we're gonna work to find that balance. Can funds be used retroactively to pay for services and equipment that was purchased and used last year? So if you take a look at paragraph 38 of the report and order, no, pilot program funds are intended to be used prospectively during the 3-year funding term. Will the pilot program cover staff salaries and other labor expenses? So staff salaries, if you take a look at the pilot ESL, staff salaries and labor costs are not eligible for reimbursement through the pilot program. So just be aware of that. Think about that as something that you want to consider as part of the big picture of, is this pilot program right for me? If I am selected to participate in the pilot, do I need to remain in the pilot for all 3 years? Yes. We expect that applicants selected for the pilot program as participants will remain committed to participating for the entire 3-year term of the pilot program. In doing so, we expect it will help participants maximize the benefits of the pilot, and it also helps us out from a data and metrics perspective. The commission needs to be able to gather the data that it needs to fully evaluate the pilot at the end of the 3-year term. And the best way to do that is to have consistency in the pilot across the 3 years. And then additionally, we hope participants will be mindful of the opportunity to participate in the program and recognize the many others who, if selected in their place, would be eager to participate. So if you are selected as a pilot participant, we want you there because it means that somebody else wasn't selected as a pilot participant, and we really do want you to see it through so that we get that full information, and folks who weren't able to participate, who may have been willing to stay in all 3 years, don't feel like, well, wait a minute, it should have been me. Will everyone who applies for the pilot program be selected? No. While the commission hopes to fund as many pilot applicants as possible, we anticipate that demand will exceed available funding. And if you've been on any of the other webinars related to the pilot program, you have likely seen that there's a lot of interest, right? And so we do not anticipate that we will be able to select everyone who applies, but we do want to select as many folks as possible. Given the limited budget and the commission's focus on schools and libraries at the highest discount percentage level, should I take the time to submit an application? There's no way for us to know in advance who's going to apply. So we encourage all eligible schools, libraries, and consortia to consider submitting an application for the pilot program. The FCC established a streamlined application process to make it easier for prospective participants to submit an application. So sitting here now, we don't know what that pool of applicants is going to look like. So if you're interested in the pilot program, we have worked to make that part one process as streamlined and easy as possible, and we encourage you to apply. And with that, it looks like I have 4 minutes. So let me take a look at the chat here and see if there are some that we can knock out easily or that Bob hasn't already answered. I feel like Bob's probably in there doing a great job of helping me out here today. So thank you to Bob for that. Okay, so for the question on will schools be allowed to apply for this pilot if working with other grant funding opportunities of similar nature to provide additional funding sources. So with all of the answers I'm going to provide today, I will say, please take a look at those resources because I just can't hit on all the nuances in the time that we have. But yes, if you are working with another grant funding opportunity, that does not prohibit you from applying for the pilot. What the report and order does do, though, is say you can't be funded twice for the same stuff. So if you are getting funded in full for, or in part, for a service or a piece of equipment, the part of that that the pilot would fund would be the part that's not being covered by something else. So hopefully that's helpful. Again, there will be more information on the resources page. And I think that's a great one for a FAQ. So I'm going to make sure that that one gets taken back. And actually I'm going to do a snip right now to make sure that I get that one sent back and we build out a FAQ on that. Okay. On the 200 million for 3 years, I kind of addressed that with that last discussion of sitting here now. We don't really know what that applicant pool is going to look like. So of course, that's a decision that the individual schools, libraries, and consortia will have to make about whether or not they want to apply. But we really do encourage you, if you think that you might be interested in the pilot program, at a minimum, attend the trainings on the application process and just see if you think, okay, this is not so burdensome that I feel like I don't have the resources to do it, because we don't know what that applicant pool is going to look like. And so from our perspective, there's no downside to applying. And then it looks like Bob answered the question there.
And Kristin, I would like to, at this point, I would like to invite Bob to unmute and ask, I believe he has a question or two, actually.
I had just gotten there, but yeah, absolutely.
Well, Kristin, actually, it's on that one I put in the chat in relationship to the 30-day Paperwork Reduction Act comment. Is that something that the OMB controls as far as when they release that open comment period? Or what federal agency does that?
Yeah, that's correct. It is OMB. And so the forms are up now. The public can actually see the forms and view them right now. What isn't there is the Federal Register summary. And that Federal Register summary is what kicks off the official 30-day public comment period. So that's
right.
Yep.
Okay. And then is there another follow-up, like a 15-day reply comment period after that?
Just the 30-day public comment period. Yep.
And do you expect then after that 30-day comment period, maybe within a matter of just several weeks, you will open up the process? Or are we talking about, 2 or 3 months after that yet?
So we still anticipate that the application filing window will open up in the fall. So
Okay.
if you take that as kind of the presumption point, it helps you kind of work backwards, and you will see 484 trainings application trainings start to get scheduled here, I would think, in the next couple weeks. So when it's not us, it's hard for me to speak to OMB and when OMB will complete
Sure.
that portion. But at least as of right now, our intent is to continue with that fall application
Okay.
timeline. Yeah.
And then I also have a follow-up in relationship. This is somewhat related to the 90% discount. That will be the priority if applicants come in or applications come in for more than the $200 million. And yet at the same time, as you had mentioned before, you're looking for a wide cross-section of applicants here. Small rural school districts and libraries, suburban districts, libraries, very large urban libraries. So I assume that, and my feeling is it's going to come over the $200 million. Even within that 90% discount, you're still going to be looking at that variety of applicants, correct?
Yeah, I think it's correct to say that 90% band will contain small schools, large schools, urban schools, rural schools, a consortia with a mix of all those entities. I think that's, I can't say for certain right now because I'm not looking at the band, right, for the
Sure.
pilot, but that seems reasonable to me. Yes, that there would be a good mix of folks in there.
And then someone related to that, when you look at the regular E-rate program itself, it's always the smaller applicants that have the most difficult time with the program. So are you going to be directing USAC to provide, special assistance to smaller schools and libraries, or to have a hotline of some sort? Could you just address the level of assistance that we can expect from USAC for this program?
Sure. So USAC will have a hotline, and folks are, able and encouraged to use it if they feel like they need it. There are going to be some, the report and order did direct us to do some specialized training. So that will be
Right.
coming up here in the future. And, if you are a small entity and you feel like you're not finding the support you need through the specialized trainings that are scheduled and the other resources that are available, that public email box will be there. So, don't hesitate to let us know. I'm a small entity. I'm really struggling. Can someone please help me? And we will, connect with, because it will be an FCC mailbox, but we will connect with USAC to help folks along. We want folks to feel like they have the resources they need to do this well and to do it supported. And so we are making that outreach and communication a priority. So yes, on the hotline, there'll be that public facing mailbox.
Okay.
And then there will be these specialized trainings coming up. I wish we could do a specialized training for every variation of potential applicants or participant that might need it. But certainly if you're not feeling like you have the support you need with what's available, let us know, and we'll
Sure.
try to provide that support. Yeah.
And if I can, I'll turn it back over to Joe Ruski in the chat. Has a good question in relationship to existing contracts. So I'll let you read that over and then reply accordingly if you would. Thank you.
Okay, and I apologize, but I actually had a hard stop at 10:45 because I'm supposed to be in another meeting.
Okay.
I can take all of these questions and I can send them to you, Kristin, and then over the course of maybe like a week or something before we send out our reply email, maybe we can get some answers to those, or we can just chat and I can type up some answers.
Okay, yeah, there are great questions here.
Yeah.
So I'll make sure I get them from Michaela, and we will work them into our FAQ process. And just thank you so much, everyone. One thing I didn't mention at the beginning, and I'm surprised I didn't start with this. I grew up in Wisconsin. Go Pack.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Great.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, everybody. I hope you have a great day.
Thank you, Kristin.
All right, and then for our membership, we are just gonna say some few closing things and then hop over to Bob. And I don't know if Rachel is still on the call, Bob, so it might just all be you. But real quick from the WiscNet side, our next Teach and Learn will be on Thursday, August 15th. Same time, 10 o'clock. It's going to be we did it last year. It's going to be our Welcome to WiscNet. So anyone who is not familiar with WiscNet wants a little refresher. It's going to be a little bit about who we are, what we do, get a chance to meet some of the team, get a chance to talk to our new CEO, Bob Reamer. He's going to be on and we'll talk to you guys a little bit. First communication for that's going to come out next week, early next week, and then the recording and any resources from this Teach and Learn today will be in a follow-up email within the week as well. And then with that, Bob, I'm not sure if there are any questions that are in the chat currently that you are able to answer. Otherwise, everyone on the call, feel free to unmute, ask questions, and we'll see if we can answer them.
Mikhail, I was just going to add from a background perspective, as most people know that have been using or applying for the E-rate for many years. You know, basic firewall services have been eligible since the program started in 1996. But when you think back, you know, well over 25 years ago now, you know, the whole issue of network security really didn't come into play for the most part. A lot of schools didn't even have or were just developing local area networks within their buildings or in wide area networks connecting their other campuses. So, and just the whole issue of security wasn't nearly the problem or the issue that we currently have today. But a lot of organizations, including DPI, some folks are familiar with the Shelby, the schools libraries or schools health libraries, broadband coalition, COSN, Coalition on School Network, have been pushing the FCC, at least 6-8 years, to make cybersecurity tools, comprehensive security tools, fully E-rate eligible. So to a certain extent, you know, we're pleased to see this pilot program, but at the same time, we wish the FCC had just bit the bullet, if you will, and had made these eligible. But we'll go through this process per se. The other issue that we had that DPI did comment on in relationship to this program is, and a lot of other organizations also said this, you know, we don't need 3 years of a pilot program to determine that comprehensive cybersecurity tools, you know, have to be a core part of any library or school internet access and networking. You know, a year and a half is fine. So we advocated for an 18-month period, but the FCC didn't accept that. So, you know, to a certain extent, 3 years is a long time, and that just kicks the can down the road. Now, in relationship, and I'll just make one other comment, which I can open it up accordingly. You know, to a certain extent, you know, right now, the E-rate has about a $1.7 billion cushion. The demand is about $3.2 billion. The ceiling, as far as the cap is concerned, is $4.9 billion. So you have about 100 or 1.7 billion in between that. Today, the FCC commissioners are meeting, and it's almost certain, 99% certain, they will pass the order in relationship to loaning hotspot devices off campus to students and patrons. So that's going to take a certain amount of that money. So, you know, I think all of us are concerned that we don't bump up against that $4.9 billion cap. And that's probably one of the reasons why the FCC has limited this pilot program to just 200 million and has stretched it out over a 3-year period. There are concerns about how much money ultimately it's going to take. So with that, I'll be, you know, glad to open it up to see if I can answer any other questions folks might have.
And then real quick while we wait. Oh, sorry, Mike.
No problem. Bob, just again, I'm looking to maybe help my E-rate clients from CISA 9. But one of the things that I think you were getting at, and I don't think Kristin had a time to respond to that, is I want to tell people you have a great chance of getting approved to Marathon City, your 60% Cat 1 discount. There's 2 chances of you getting approved. And I think it's important for us to be able to share that so that people can honestly, you know, understand their possibilities of being in this, of being approved in this CPP.
Right, I would say too, and as Kristin noted, it's impossible to note beforehand, obviously, on what the demand is going to be. But when you look at the larger urban districts, in Wisconsin here, we look at Milwaukee, for example, they're at 90%. Most of the urban districts in other states are at a 90% discount as well. My assumption is many of these are going to be applying. I would be surprised if anyone certainly below 60%, would be funded at all. And I think realistic, anyone or a school or library below 70% stands a small chance of being funded.
And then Ivor reposted it, but at the beginning, before people joined, Rachel Schemelin put in a link to the DPI resource for the pilot program. So that's up at the beginning of the chat, but Ivor posted it right here at the end. So everyone has that as well. I'll put that link in our follow-up email as well. So if you don't grab it from the chat, no worries.
I guess one other comment I could quickly make when you look at it, I'm just looking for that paragraph reference to the first part of the new Form 484. And of course, now I can't, here it is, I think. Yeah, so we're looking at paragraph 64 in the order. When you look at a series of bullets, I think there are about 10 or 12 bullets here that applicants are going to have to address. And I guess this is the initial part of the application process. And then if you think of a small rural school district or a small library in a community of a couple thousand people, there's going to be no way for the most part that these, even if they're at a 90%, that they're going to be able to go through this really in a comprehensive fashion and answer these questions. So that's where I had asked Kristin about the amount of help that they can expect from USAC. And personally, I would like to see that help on the initial part of the application process, not somewhat after the fact, but I'm not certain where that's going to fit in as far as the priorities are concerned on how much help, in this initial process, USAC is going to be able to provide. From a larger district or library perspective, they have obviously networking people full-time on board that can quite easily go through these questions that are being asked and answer them accordingly. But again, if they expect smaller schools and libraries to apply, I think they're going to have to do a fair amount of hand-holding.
Anyone have any other questions for Bob? Definitely feel free to unmute. And then if not, again, I will pass along all of the questions that Kristin was unable to get to. We will pass those along to her, get some answers, and either those will get put in their FAQ, or even if we can put them in our post email that we send out within the week, we will do that. Otherwise, we'd really like to thank everyone for joining today. We had a great turnout. Hopefully, it was as informative for you as it was for us. And we will see you on the next one.
Good. Thank you, folks. Take care.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Bye.